Magnus winning in a variety of different ways. As we get the 3+1 underway, he's won in scrambles, he's won good games. So curious to see how Jose approaches things now.
Yeah, basically, if you keep that same deficit, it's going to be almost an insurmountable lead when it comes down to the bullet. So you need to do a little bit better in 3-1 than you did in the 5-minute section. I mean, opponent is Magnus Carlsen, so easier said than done.
Exactly right. And Magnus is going to keep things very, very chill with the white pieces. He is not going to be an easy person to defeat. The chances will maybe come when you play white, but even then, if the job is do not lose, Magnus doesn't do a whole bunch of that. And coming back from a 4-point deficit is going to be very challenging, but you can also just put up a very good fight. That's also probably what Jose is thinking about.
Yeah, and I think I almost want to take on c5, before black gets to play pawn to c4. And so then we get all the moves that we want. Bishop to b2, most likely knight d2, knight f3, but it really depends if black tries to play rook d8 and threaten d4, because that's something you really don't want to allow.
Queen c1, pinning the bishop to the queen. Rook d1 is there. Bishop takes f6 ideas as well. Not right now, but I do have to say, Magnus looks perpetually bored, and I wonder if it's because he's not being issued a sufficient enough challenge, or if it's lack of sleep.
Yeah, I really wonder the same. I noticed we have most likely a fan going on in rotation there, keeping him cool. Wonder if it maybe is having to do with just overheating.
Could be. A lot of nice studio lights. We see them at the bottom there. Yeah, this is not a position where you can find a lot of fascinating stuff going on. The knight is going to try to maneuver itself to the dark squares in the center. In the long run, if you trade some pieces, this is, of course, the famous IQP. Isolated queen's pawn. There we go. Bishop b4. Now you have some questions you have to answer, like, do you go queen d1? Do you trade? Do you play knight f3?
Levy, I think the producers have given us some direction here. The board has shrunk compared to the cameras. So if you could please direct your commentary to the players' cameras, that would be appreciated here. Let's focus on the real reason we're all here.
All right. Well, yeah, there you go. They got some big old faces. There you go.
Couldn't have said it better myself. There we go. Okay.
Why do we even talk? Like they in sports, Mike Breen and crew are not on TV, so let's just focus on their giga faces. And by the way, not much is happening here, I will just say.
Yep, we were just fine on the other view there. Not much developing, except you're just looking at that D pawn, and you know that long term f3, king d2, there's going to be a slight push for white. Even if the engine doesn't recognize it, doesn't give it credit, it's there.
Magnus will play this position out also forever. That's the nice benefit of this format. You're playing against the ticking clock. And so with white, you can just play and play and play and play. And this is not a situation you wanted to see yourself in as black if you're trying to win a game.
Yeah, h4, h5. A lot of times you see h4, h5. If black ends up taking, you can kind of follow up with a g5 and then slide the rook from a1 over to h1. So there's always ways to make progress, and there's one of them. So he will definitely go for this move.
Jose dancing backwards to try to trade off white's knight in the center of the board. We did see a king, rook, and knight game that ended up in a king and knight game. And we were deep in the end game there. And Jose in a time trouble backed up his king and ended up losing that one. So he'll try to rectify the situation here. We're heading for a rook end game.
Yeah, knight takes on e6, at least the king would have to recapture because of rook h7. So not ideal. You normally would want to capture with the pawn and maybe strengthen the center, but king takes. we're talking about an absolute micro advantage here, right? This is pretty much equal.
Yeah, I don't know what you do if... Okay, I wouldn't have gone b5, but I don't know what you do if you just keep moving the king back and forth. King z4, I always think you have some rook c2 stuff. But these positions they're much more full of life than you would expect, and Magnus has kind of made a career playing these positions out. So we'll see if he can do it here again.
So the idea for Jose is b4. b4 to gain access to the c3 square. Now that a3 has been played, b4 also means that the b3 pawn is hanging. Rook c3, rook takes b3. So I don't know that you can allow it without going for full counterplay, and I think he's going to go all in with king up to d4 if b4 gets played, captures, king d4, and then rook a1, rook a6, like this kind of stuff.
There we go. We see it. F5 would be nice if you trade and everything, and then Aman just calling it like it is. You know, maybe rook b6. Look at this. Magnus sacrificing a pawn because he knows black can't make easy progress here.
Yeah, but also black doesn't have to make any
Correct.
progress. You can do nothing.
You can't take, you lose this. You can't really move your F pawn forward because it's just, yeah, and there and then we are heading for a draw. Will Magnus offer it, or is he just going to bleed? Well, is he going to do the Hikaru?
I don't even know if you're bleeding the clock here. Probably we'll see some sort of repetition. I can't imagine Magnus wants to spend too much time here, but...
Well, it looks like he wants to spend a little bit of time.
There is the, I have seen, let's say f6 happens and then f takes g5. There is the well-known thing that, well, if you trade the rooks there, that's a winning king and pawn endgame. But that's about the worst